Protecting communities from flooding is a priority for this government. The government continuously assesses preparedness for flooding at local and national levels in England. The Met Office and Environment Agency and Flood Forecasting Centre provide multiple flood forecasting and warning services and work with local resilience forums and partners to inform actions and will consider the effectiveness of the flood response.
I'm grateful for that response. The noble lady will be aware our hearts go out to those who lost their lives in the recent floods. Should we be doing more between floods in terms of maintenance and dredging? And does she share my concern that there should be a one-stop shop, if you like, for flood warnings? We're to go to the Environment Agency for all flood warnings apart from surface water, where we have to go to local councils. Obviously, in a time of deep distress, such as a forthcoming flood, it would be much better if there was just one place to go for both preparedness and the issuing of sandbags and such.
Just briefly on the dredging question, the Environment Agency undertakes dredging to manage flood risk where it's technically effective and where it doesn't significantly increase flood risk for others downstream and is environmentally acceptable. Some locations will benefit from this, others won't, so it's looked at case by case. On the issue of flood warnings, my feeling is that most of the time this works very, very well. I'm signed up for them. We get it by email, we get it by text, we get a phone call. And anyone who isn't signed up for flood warnings, who live in a flood area, I would urge them to do so because it is effective. Regarding her issue around the single place, I think that's something that I can take back to the department to review.
My Lords, for every 1 degree rise in temperature, the air can hold up to 7% more moisture. In the UK, climate change, rapid climate change, is having an ever-devastating impact on our local citizens and property. We are particularly seeing a rise in very localised extreme weather, surface, water flooding events. Can I ask the Government what action they're doing to help improve the forecasting models for these hyper-localised devastating flooding events?
Well, I think the answer is twofold. First of all, what do we need to do to reduce the likelihood of surface flooding? And a lot of the natural, nature-based solutions that we've been bringing in and discussing in the water bill will help towards that. But I think, climate change is having a serious impact. So we do need to review the effectiveness of how we're working and have a long-term model. And we have the new Flood Resilience Forum that we've set up, and it will be looking across the board and considering floods that have taken place and how we can react better in the future.
My Lords, I refer to my interest as Chair of the National Preparedness Commission. Could the noble lady, the Minister, tell me, given the need to mitigate surface water problems in all sorts of areas, what consideration is being given to tightening up the planning guidelines, which at the moment make it really very easy for people to pave over what would otherwise be grassed areas or areas where there could be natural drainage?
This is a really important question, and clearly we've got a planning bill coming up, and I understand that we can look at it during that bill. But also one thing we have committed to as a government is to ensure that when we build more high quality, better designed, sustainable homes, because we need to ensure that our built areas increase climate resilience and promote nature recovery. So we've got the National Planning Policy Forum, which has been consulted on, and that will inform better planning and better sustainable growth for our built environment.
My Lords, Storm Bert was a tragedy for homeowners who were flooded out and their homes and businesses destroyed. They have our sympathy and support. But it was also a disaster for farmers who are already worried about increased cost and tax burdens as a result of the budget. Now, the Conservative government introduced the Farming Recovery Fund to support farmers in these exact circumstances. Can the noble Baroness, the Minister, tell the House exactly how much financial support has been given to farmers through the fund in response to Storm Bert, since she confirmed that the scheme has already been opened?
Well, as the Noble Lord, I'm sure is aware, is we recently announced the £60 million to be distributed through the Farming Recovery Fund from the previous floods. So clearly it's very important that we support farmers. It's a very difficult time when your land is flooded. It can take a long time to recover and be very expensive. So clearly this is something we're currently looking at.
Would the Noble Lady look very carefully at the criteria that are set? Because farmland has been flooded that is more than a mile from a river, and yet they're told that they're not eligible for this flooding. It all comes back to surface water and building on floodplains. But would the Noble Lady look very closely at that particular criteria?
We are actually reviewing the whole criteria around flood funding at the moment because it isn't really fit for purpose, and certain areas that require funding are not necessarily eligible to get it. So it's something we're looking at in the whole.
Is the Noble Lady confident that the government is prepared and ready to handle red warnings?
The government is confident that it is working extremely hard to learn from previous events in order to improve responses as it goes forward. It's why we've set up the Flood Resilience Task Force. We want to ensure that we do the best job we can.
My Lords, on that point, flooding is just one aspect of the wider issue of national resilience. What action is the government taking to ensure that we have proper command and control mechanisms that can identify need at times of national stress, can identify the resources that are required to meet those needs, and can coordinate the activity of various services, including the emergency services, the military, in the most efficient manner in a time of considerable crisis?
That's a very important point, and on that point I would like to give credit to the different organisations in Cumbria, because in Cumbria we do national resilience extremely well, and we have a setup in Penrith where people come together because we have had a number of events, not just flooding in Cumbria, and we have learned from those, and there is good work taking place at the moment, and it's very effective.
Flood Re, which is the, you know all about Flood Re, whether Flood Re would be included in the review, because there must be quite a lot of claims that have gone into Flood Re from the recent events, and there will certainly be some risks which we're not able to get cover from Flood Re because of the Flood Re rules. And it may well be that considering the Flood Re rules again in the light of this disaster would be a good thing.
I mean, Flood Re has been running for a number of years now. And I'm sure the Noble Lord and other Noble Lords are aware of its, there are exceptions to what can be put forward into it. Multiple occupational buildings, for example, is one. My understanding is that it is being reviewed because it's only available up to a certain date, and we've reached the stage where it's going to be looked at and reviewed. And of course the other issue is businesses aren't covered either. So I think it is important that we continue to monitor and review it as its effectiveness, but also look at how we support those people who are not then supported by actually what is a very important insurance backup.
Take my noble friend back to the question from our noble friend Lord Harris, who raised the issue of paving specifically in built-up areas. I hope I didn't mishear her. I think she didn't specifically say whether the new planning arrangements will address that issue in particular, which is a very serious problem in high-density urban areas, and it's usually to do with people wanting to park cars. Will the government promote the use of porous materials which can be used and will support the weight of vehicles but are much less damaging to the environment?
Well, clearly I don't want to preempt the outcomes of the National Planning Policy Framework, but there are some excellent porous materials available now, and I think it's important that the government encourages usage of those where they're appropriate.
If I might just follow up on the planning issue, one of the places which flooded was the Billing Aquadrome, which was actually built as a leisure resort and temporary accommodation for people to spend riverside holidays. One of the problems with these temporary caravan homes are that they're often built in floodplains, and they are used not just for holidays, They're used for permanent residence because of the housing shortage. People are using such premises, and many people there suffered considerable problems. What does the noble Baroness, the Minister, think can be done about these matters?
Well, it is an important point, because I am aware that often when you have serious floods, that caravan parks, I don't know if that's the right terminology, but people who live in those caravan sites get flooded over and over and over again. And there is one near where I live, so I completely understand the point he's making. Whether or not it's going to be included in any future planning framework as to how they're going to be managed, I'm unsure at the moment, but I'm sure we will come back to this question as the planning policy framework moves forward.